my friends, welcome back to Mario Doodles. Just relax and enjoy this video. Today we create a very sweet cityscape, a very minimalistic and futuristic cityscape, starting with a layer on the bottom which I go to color with blue color. This is my sky. After this I go to lock this layer so I can't draw anymore on it. I go on a next layer on the top and I start to build all the things that I need for my city, basically buildings. So what I go to do is to use the square tool to make squares, and after that I go to make a few shapes, which is the main body of the building, and then I go to make windows. I color the sides of my building. One side is brighter, the other is darker. Let's imagine that the sun is coming from the left side. So let's not forget this. Of course, as usually we do in the tutorials, you can create on a layer a little light source as reminder so you don't forget it. Later you can delete it, but in this way at least you know from where the light is coming. Remember that with the rectangular masking tool, you are able to select portions like I'm doing in this moment, and you can copy them. Okay, so you don't need always to draw everything from scratch. You can really take pieces from here and there and build new stuff over there. So it's very, very useful. This is something that I do quite often when we speak about very geometrical shapes like buildings. At this moment I'm going to create all the shadows and highlights just with two colors. We like to create this time an image with a limited color palette. So I take just a few colors for the building. You see, I'm making the building over there with 3 shadings, or let's say almost with 4, because sometimes I consider even the black outline as shading. But this time, you see, I'm creating very dark shadows with a very dark brown color, which is darker than the right side of my building. Then I select everything and I copy and paste it on the left side so that I create an even higher tower of the building. So I try to create something which looks interesting. You can see that the windows in the middle of the second tower are different as placement than the first tower. This makes in the way that the building looks more interesting and it doesn't look like just a copy paste. So that's something very important. Make sure that when you copy stuff, it doesn't look always exactly the same like the original one. You see, this time, compared to the other times, I'm using quite a lot this rectangular tool, which allows me to make windows, doors, even the shadows, or in this moment, the connection between these two towers. You can imagine almost that there we have little tubes of glass or maybe of metal where the people can go from one side to the other side without exiting the entire building. So in this way it's easier for the people to switch from one building to the other one. After this step, on the top of the left one, I create metal tubes, pipings, all the things which makes the building look a bit more futuristic. Here we go. So it's quite easy. I mean, this time we go to make a very small artwork. We don't need too many details. And this makes also sure that you do not spend too much time in your artwork. Sometimes simple stuff look so much better than artwork which is loaded full of different little details here and there. To make the reflection in the glass, I used the contour tool with a white color and I make just a few shapes here and there to give the impression of reflections. Reflections can be created from the clouds, for example, on the sky, or maybe from other objects around the building. But usually when you make a window reflection, you go to use a blue color, which is the reflection of the sky, and then white color. This is very classical for windows of a building. Or for example, also if you make the windows of a car, you make the same thing. So blue and white color. You see, I'm refining a little bit here and there all the building. This is the base of the building where the entire two towers are sitting. So we have a big piece of concrete. And you see, since I made everything on a separate layer, separated from the sky, I can really move it around. So that's very important. I will repeat it in any video that I'm doing. Create more than one layer. That's so important. With the contour tool now, I create another base. This is the base where the entire building is sitting on, but this time it's not concrete. It's, for example, grass or, something more organic. That's why I made the shape very irregular, like small hills here and there. And with the contour tool, I choose a bright green color and I go to draw highlights, remembering always that the sunlight is coming from the left side. That's why my highlights are on the left side. And now we can decide if to add shadows or leave it like this. But already just placing highlights gives you already the indication of the volume of the entire object. I add maybe a little bit of highlights, but you can also delete them or not do them. In fact, you see, it looks maybe even better with not such a strong shadow on the ground. Obviously, the shadow is on the opposite side, so not on the left side, but on the right side. So here we go, you see, it looks very nice. I go to make even stronger highlights now. The stronger the highlight is, the more the object will pop out of the picture. So remember, highlights are so important. I really love this process. Once you made the entire object, later you add for a second time the highlights, they really pop out. So that's really beautiful. Now I create a few buildings on the background. They don't need to have so many details like my two towers here in front, because on the background they are far from our focus point. This means we do not see anyway so much details. Just add a few windows here and there. Remember that we can copy and paste them later if you like. So with the masking tool, I select everything and then I just copy paste them. I like to create windows which are not equal. You see, on the top they are bigger than on the bottom one. So there can be many different reasons. Maybe on the bottom there are more offices, on the top maybe housings, so flats, who knows. So we try to make it simply more interesting. This is the right side, so we have a shadow. So let's create more thickness for our buildings. Let's add a few tiny windows here and there also on the other side. You see, it's so easy to create details, especially for pixel arts. You don't need to have so many details. You can just scribble here and there and give just the indication of something. Since those were on another layer, I selected the opacity of the layer and I went down with the opacity number. This makes sure that now they become bluish, so a blue tint on the entire objects. This makes sure that it looks like that those buildings are very far from the main building that we made before. So remember, bringing down the opacity will colorize the object with the color of the sky in our case. And this is what happens also in reality. So if you go to look out from the window and you see mountains or buildings very far from you, they have a bluish color. And this is what we go to do. So you don't see anymore a lot of details, and this is the intention of bringing down the opacity. Let's make a few trees. I think you understood that I love trees. There are so many shapes. And I start always with the trunk from the bottom. And after that I made the branches. The branches, of course, are always thinner and thinner the farther you go to draw them from the trunk. Remember, a tree is never a symmetrical object, so go really in all directions that you prefer. Don't be chained to symmetry in this case. I would even say the less symmetry you use for a tree, the better the tree will look like at the end. So be brave in this case, my friend. Make something which is absolutely not symmetrical. Now I go to use the spray tool, which is really amazing to create the leaves of a tree. I'm using pixel size 2, and in this case I choose it a square size, not a round size. You see, I draw them on the back, so I create a new layer and I create these leaves on the back of the main trunk. Because otherwise you would cover everything, and this we don't like. We like for now to preserve everything. We will cover it only with the highlights. You see, now I have made a new layer, and with the same spray but a bit bigger, so number 3 of pixel size and a lower opacity, I go to draw on the left side the highlights. In this case it's like in autumn, you have in this period of the year leaves which are golden and there's a little bit green in between. That's why I use it this yellowish orange color on the left side, and then in the middle more or less I go to use a greenish color with opacity around 15, so you see very low opacity. That's the best moment, as you know, at least for me. I create the highlights now, and there I go to place opacity number 255, which is 100%, so there's no opacity basically, and I create the highlights of the leaves. Now we could go to do the same thing also for the trunk. I use a very low opacity brown color, and from the left side, again because the sun is on the left side, I go to draw all the details of the trunk, the highlights, and with a bluish color I draw on the right side the shadows. So let's always remember this. Shadows usually are on bluish color, very desaturated, and the highlights are in brighter colors, close to orange. To add more details, I just add falling leaves on the ground. So you see, it looks so cute because now they're even falling from the tree. So they're not only on the ground, but they're also in the air. Maybe there's a bit wind over there, and the wind is letting fall all the leaves on the ground. Just imagine that you are there. Try to imagine to feel the wind on your face. Try to imagine to hear the sounds of the city. In this way you will understand what details you can add. So that's something very important. Try to be there. It gives you a very nice feeling. So we try to escape from the problems that we have every day in job. And in this way we feel better. It's like making vacation for free. Can you imagine? Let's make the clouds. As you know, I made a cloud tutorial. If you didn't see it, I suggest you to check it out. Over there I make many circles. It looks a bit like popcorn. So that's the easiest way to make clouds. Of course there are many shapes of clouds, but this one here maybe is the most common one. So many circles, not all perfect of course. And after that, whenever you made all your circles, we are able to make the highlights later on. So here you see, I make shapes like a S shape or like a snake. It looks a bit like clouds in the wind. I like this a lot. So try to discover which kind of shapes you like. I mask everything, and now I go to the contour tool. Sorry, no, first let's make it a bit darker. They were a bit too bright before. Let's go now to the contour tool and let's make them brighter on the left side. I make basically half moon shapes. The half moon direction is towards to the sun. In this way it's very easy to make the highlights of the clouds. You see, it's really very easy to make clouds, especially when you talk about pixel art. When we go to speak about generally digital art, which is where we exclude maybe pixel art, it's a lot harder because you have to put a lot of more shadings. But pixel art is much easier and so relaxing because it's very simple, and this is what makes it looking so interesting, so peaceful. So it looks really very nice. I can almost imagine to be there. It looks really wonderful. I make a new layer, and that's a little trick. I go to the gradient tool and I create a gradient which on one side is yellowish, on the other side it becomes transparent. And it's sitting on the top layer, as you can see. This allows you, through this dithering, this is the technique name, so dithering, which means at the end you create shadings through different spacings of pixels. And lowering the layer opacity, you see the left side now is a bit more on yellow color. So it looks really amazing. It gives you the impression that the light is really coming from the left side. I think this is all for today, and see you next time then. Bye bye.